It's always felt homey here, right, in this neighborhood.
I feel like I belong here.
It's home. There's lots of good memories about living in the neighborhood.
I don't have any great plans to move. I really like it here.
People living in the perimeters or on the outside looking in, making bad comments about the population that are living here. So over the years, the name North Central became the identifying factor, and it's called the hood. I've never been able to determine what is a hood and where does it exist within North Central.
I guess when you think about generally sort of the news coverage that comes out of North Central, it's not very good, right? You know, it's the tactical unit of the police blocking off a street. It's, 18 cop cars on a block. It's, ambulances.
I think we're like this ugly wart in the middle of the city that, you can see, and you're like, you dab a little ointment on it, but it's like, it's not getting any better.
We tend to have a higher population of people who are, in poverty and wrestling with addiction and have trauma in their backgrounds. I mean, you can look around the world and across history, right? And places where you've got impoverished people all sort of in one spot, and you have higher crime levels. So it's not something unique to North Central and to the people who live here.
When we first bought the house, North Central, in my opinion, was one of the safest places in Regina to go to. Eventually, I had to put in a 6-foot-high chain link fence in the back, and that's when the conditions around where we lived started to change. Both my wife and myself, one summer day, were sitting out on the back. 2 doors down from us, I heard what I thought was a gunshot. I very foolishly got up, walked down the alley, 2 doors down, and walked into that yard. 2 people come out of that yard, one of them carrying a gun. It wasn't just that, but it was just the feeling of living in a place that you felt unsafe.
I mean, even you drive around the neighborhood, right? And particularly if you're seeing the graffiti and the burnt out houses and all of that kind of stuff, it doesn't look very good, right?
Somebody asked me the question, would you feel safe walking on any of the streets? My answer would be, no, I wouldn't feel safe. So the conditions changed as a result of the political change that started in 1982 and beyond.
Regina started as the capital of the Northwest Territories in the late 1800s. The railroads came in, which brought in the economic, trade hub for the agricultural region. The smell and the noise would have made it a less attractive place for people to build. As Regina grew, it was during the First World War, the Depression, the Second World War. There wasn't a lot of resources to build sewer systems, to build water systems, to build and pave roads. Into the 50s, post-war, we're in the boom era, but families are changing. The investment was being made into the nicer neighborhoods because those in the nicer neighborhoods have the economic and the political and the cultural capital to say, hey, we need these services. The lesser other side of the tracks didn't get those services. So that exacerbated the system.
It's not just one person you see walking down the street that obviously has a lot of social issues. It's the community. And we have to start maybe on an individual basis, but incorporate that into providing the resources as a community.
I remember it clear as day. My brother had just given me a brand new knife set the day before. It was brand new in a box. My girlfriend was pregnant. We had a nice little place, and I was going out that day. I was selfish, and I was going to see my friends, and my gut said I should take a knife. I drank and drank. I don't remember how we ended up in the alley. I don't remember walking with these people. And we just happened to be walking in North Central, and three brothers, they started demanding smokes and money. And my friend said, I turned over to him and I said, okay, get out of here, I got this. I got in a confrontation with these guys. They started it, and I challenged them, and then next thing you know, the four of us were in a big brawl, and I attacked one of them with the meat cleaver, and I'm very thankful they had no bullets. A man was looking out his kitchen window, and he just happened to see this in the alley, and he phones the police. The police come to the alley. They find me laying in a pool of blood that wasn't mine, and they followed the trail of blood and found the three brothers. And I was in a coma.
What was happening in the 60s was Indigenous people got the right to vote.
In a forthcoming federal election, all Indians of voting age will be entitled to vote for the first time in Canadian history.
And the past system was no longer being practiced, and so people were allowed more movement and freedom.
And so they were moving into this lower class neighborhood, and then it became an even more racialized neighborhood.
We've seen things start to change a bit. We had new programs develop, more funding opportunities for social programs. And then again, we now had another conservative government, and we have what we have today. One of our so-called city councilors was asked the question, why isn't there more resources put into North Central to make North Central a better place to live? That person's answer, we need a dumping ground for the undesirables.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is about railroad tracks, but there seems to be some sort of a division they create. There's a reason the other side of the tracks is an English saying, right? And we know what that means. we're hemmed in between two railroad tracks in North Central. So, and it gets almost immediately better on either side as soon as you're out. It just, other side of Albert Street starts to get better, other side of Louvain starts to get better. And you see that in other cities as well. So I don't know magically why that community is radically different than ours.
It's kind of in the containment, right? Like, okay, there's killings around prostitution, so we'll let them prostitute in North Central. You know, we'll contain it, you know? Oh, there's crime follows the bandana, you know? So let's contain it.
Whereas you could say the reserve system was a containment policy, right? That said through laws that relegated the Indigenous people to the reserves through treaties and bad negotiations on our part. And then the pass system was introduced after the Louis Riel Rebellion, and Indigenous people weren't even allowed to leave the reserve. So then you have impoverished individuals coming into an area that is already impoverished.
When we talk about where are people going to live, people that are on low income, people that are on welfare, people moving in from the reserve, where are they going to move to? Move into North Central. The idea then was, why in North Central? Let's spread them out across a wider area in Regina.
There is also, I suppose, a bit of an us-them, right? Like, there's an understanding that people don't want to live in North Central. Like, the rest of the city kind of looks down on us. Like, that's where all those people live.
When we talk about blocking off North Central as a community, I don't see that as much as the kind of attitudes that exist outside of North Central that would discourage people who live in North Central from becoming a part of the wider community. And that's where the whole question of racism enters the picture.
With the residential school experience, there was all these cycles that started. And then with those cycles, like cycles of abuse, cycles of addiction, cycles of poverty, comes the crime and the gang activity and the prostitution. And so I feel that we see those effects today like it's an intergenerational thing.
Regina is really racist. And so I think that there's a level of comfort having family and friends around versus maybe being in some of the suburban areas where if you're judged for the color of your skin, you might not necessarily be welcomed in those neighborhoods.
I grew up in the South End where there were kind of the better off families, and I had a hard time growing up, being an little Indigenous girl trying to grow up in this rich white neighborhood. I found that I was experiencing racism there, and that was tough as a youngster. And then when I moved here, I felt like the first time I felt like a part of the Indigenous community, because I had kind of learned bits and pieces, but by the time I got to Chile for Children, that's where I learned about really the culture, like the powwows and the bannock and the sense of humor, and started to feel part of that and was accepted as part of that.
There's so much in North Central, and it's really a beautiful environment if you know it. There's an Indian Christian fellowship on Dudney and Garnet. I've always gone there since I got the girls because I had nothing. I was just a homeless convict on welfare and I had this belief that I could take care of my kids because I wasn't taken care of, right? You have to want it. People could tell me till I was blue in the face, but I could only change myself. And that's what I believe is a problem, is we're not taught that. We're just kept dependent. I feel out of place everywhere I go, you know, and the only places I feel at home are these shelters that I used to go for help, and now that I can be help, I would like to do the same thing.
If the community wants to lift it up, you know, then you need people to help lift it up. You need people who are willing to invest in it, not necessarily money, but time and volunteering.
There's also sort of a sense of pride in the neighborhood. There's a sense of, you know, like, yeah, we belong here, that if you live here, you need to be strong.
One of the things that I loved that the community came together and initiated was a smudge walk. People who live here, but also people who live outside the community, and just coming to show support. I also love that any day of the summer you go to Dooney Pool and it's full. The kids love the pool. So for me, as long as the kids are safe, having fun, enjoying their summer, that's what the neighborhood should be about.
I like the park outside here because I've been taking my puppy there since I first got her. And I love the whole community. It reminds me of growing up, and I probably have a memory on every block.
My kids went to Sacred Heart, and so that was always a place that we enjoyed going, and the school had a real sense of community as well. Well, the men's wellness unit is involved in reintegration work, so generally Indigenous men who are coming out of a correctional setting or something like that. Some kind of fairly pervasive, problematic kind of lifestyle issues. And they're all here voluntarily. They all want to make changes, and so we do what we can to support those changes.
Mama Wiatitam being built was a big step to reconciliation, because I was a part of the group doing consultation in the community, and there's a group of women who came who lived in the community, and they were non-Indigenous, and they came to cause a ruckus. They were like, why build this building? We don't need it. This is too much for this neighborhood. We shouldn't be spending this kind of money here. And I was like, why are you guys saying that? You live in the neighborhood. It's really, you know, a defeatist attitude, hearing those voices of these people who they wanted nothing good for this neighborhood to happen for the future.
Over the years, there's been a lot of opportunity to turn North Central, what you see, into something a lot different than what you see today. If we can afford to spend money on building a new stadium, instead of refurbishing the stadium we have, and they could have done that, there's really nothing wrong with the old stadium in that respect. But if we're going to be spending money on that, what about money being spent on the area, like encouraging programs that would encourage landlords to fix up their property, and a different program? The response was, we're already putting money into that.
I remember when Superstore moved into the neighborhood, it affected the other grocery stores, and so one by one they started to shut down. I go to a corner store here and a jug of milk is anywhere between $5 to $6. price of convenience, right?
I live here, I work here, I volunteer here, and a lot of my activities are here. But I'm lucky I can jump in my car and drive away. There's people in the neighborhood who don't have the capacity to have a vehicle or even get easy transportation.
You see fewer services, fewer investments in the area because there's those who invest in North Central or provide services because of its reputation.
I guess we have a lot of people sort of in and out of jail in the neighborhood because they're getting released back to their families a lot of times, and their families live here. So you almost get like a bit of a cycle going, right? A few years ago, it was 80% of the active police force, like on duty, would be in North Central at any given time. So just by the fact that you've got that many officers, if something randomly happens in North Central, well, the likelihood that the police are going to notice or see it or hear about it or get there in time to do something about it is way higher, just because they're already all here.
There is a higher presence here. I know that they're supposed to protect us, but I know that we've experienced times where they haven't been exactly doing that. One time they came to the house in the middle of the night, knocked on the door, and were looking for a relative that doesn't live here. They didn't say they had a warrant. I didn't know what my rights were. So they just came in, they walked right through the house, and they looked and they had their guns drawn. I definitely feel like if I don't listen, that there's consequences for me. So I don't feel like that's the same for other people who aren't Indigenous. I've always thought that we should be allowed to walk in our neighborhood and that the police are here to protect us when we ask them. So, you know, I didn't feel safe knowing that that wasn't the way it worked here in this neighborhood for whatever reason.
We can't write a check out tomorrow to have those things happen. We don't have the financial resources to make that happen. What we do have is mouths to get the message across.
And I said, this is what I think you can do that's tangible. Change Dewdney Avenue. And I'm recommending Buffalo.
If you were to completely remove the name North Central, what would you name this area?
Just off the top of my head, Buffalo Meadows. This is prime buffalo land. That's a reconnection to my identity and my ancestors' connection to the buffalo and their identity. I would want to reframe North Central and rename it, because that's a more truer sense of reconciliation for me. And just to have these running buffalo images all over the place till you have a herd, you know, and also maybe a zone of protection too. One day we hope to be able to have buffalo tracks on the sidewalks, kind of as the boundary of Buffalo Meadows. I think there's just so much potential for this neighborhood.
My hopes and dreams for North Central is that North Central can become a healthy part of the wider community, where people are not looked down on anymore because of your skin color. We still need the cooperation from all levels of government to recognize that there are advantages to turn things around.
There's always a hope that, you know, this neighborhood would be at least on par with some of the other neighborhoods. There's just so much potential. But will it ever have those, you know, the shiny house with the white picket fence and green grass? I don't know. I don't even know if that's something that people want now, right? Shiny new house. Maybe you just want a house that makes sure that the roof doesn't leak. It's also about prayers for the community, just wanting the community to heal from whatever it's been dealing with in the past, right? And wanting a better future. This is a good community. You need to, open your eyes and realize that.
I love it. I feel safe here. It's a time of day thing. You don't feel safe after a certain time of the day, but generally, yeah, I love this neighborhood.
There's still poverty, there's still drugs, there's still violence, right? There's still gangs. But at the same token, a lot of my friends live in the neighborhood, and my kids went to school in the neighborhood, and so it's home.
It's memories, like my friend Jeff, he got shot and killed here by the police there not too long ago, Jeff Morris. And just a few days before, he was just crossing the street. And I'll always see him smiling at me. That's, and people have died. It always sucks because you always, being from North Central, you know who killed them and you know who got killed, and it doesn't take long to hear the story eventually, right? And so it hurts as much as it helps. And I just feel so out of place everywhere else. This is the only community that makes me feel like I belong.